The very first step of incubation is selection of eggs, because you don't just put any eggs in the incubator. You have to use some criteria on how to get good eggs for incubation. So the first thing, of course, is to look at the sizes. The eggs that should go into the incubator should be of average size. There are even some places where they are weighed. An average, a good egg for incubation should weigh around 60 grams. And so, as you can see in my tray here, and of course the cleanliness of the eggs is a very important factor to check. You can see all my eggs are clean. The other factor is to check how long they have stayed after they were laid. A good egg for incubation should last at most seven days. So at most means that it should not last more than 7 days before you put it in the incubator. If you check properly, there are some times where we even name, we even write the dates when the eggs were laid, so that we are very clear on the number of days they have stayed after they were laid. So these were laid, I think, around 2 days ago, so they are fit for incubation. You should also check for cracks. You should never ever put a cracked egg inside the incubator. So the reason we have dwelt so much on the eggs is because once you start your incubation process in the right step, you are very sure to succeed. So we usually train our farmers to be very keen on the type of eggs that they should put in the machine. So after you selected your eggs very carefully, now the next step, of course, it will be to arrange them in the incubator. I'm going to demonstrate that with an incubator here of around 2,200 eggs. It already has some eggs, and I will open it so that you see what is happening inside. The good thing with our incubators is that you don't have to fill them up with all the eggs at a go, because as you know, it's also a challenge to get 2,000 eggs in one day. So they are manufactured in such a way that you can be able to put the eggs in stages, and that also ensures that you don't have to accumulate eggs in the outside waiting for them to get to the capacity of the incubator. So you can be putting the eggs in stages as you get them, and this also ensures that you are putting fresh eggs. You don't have to wait for so long before you incubate them. So there are several factors that are found inside the incubator. The three most important factors is temperature, which should be set at that 7.8. The other important factor is humidity, which should be set at 60 degrees. The other very important factor is the turning of the eggs. Initially, when we started manufacturing incubators, they used to be manually turned. People used to come in the morning, wanageuza mayai to the other side. But nowadays, technology has really improved. These machines are now automatic. They turn the eggs by themselves, and this happens every 1.5 hours. So if you are keen enough, you'll be able to see that these trays are moving up. So that's how the turning happens inside the machine, and it happens automatically every 1.5 hours. So when you have those three conditions perfect in your machine, and you had selected your eggs, as I mentioned, you can be able to achieve a very good hatch rate. These incubators even achieve up to 95% hatch rate. So the incubator is composed of different components. It has some heaters, it has some fans, it has this computer, which you can clearly see here. It has some water trough at the bottom. That water trough is the one that provides humidity. Before I forget, it may not be viable to use an incubator if at the end of the day, when you do your calculations, you find that you have spent so much than you are getting out of it. So what I'm trying to say is that they have a very low power consumption. For instance, in around 21 days, this incubator spends 3,200 shillings. So if you compare that with the whole 2,000 eggs, that's a very, very low power consumption. So we usually say it gives you good returns on investment. So the eggs stay here for 18 days. Then we pull them out and put them in a separate machine there called a hatcher. But normally for farmers, you really don't have to incur a cost of a hatcher. These are multi-purpose incubator, which means that it has some hatching space in itself at the bottom. So the trays that you find up here should only hold eggs for 18 days. After that, now you remove them and put the eggs in hatching basket where they should last for 3 days, 19th, 20th, and 21st day. It will be very important for me to mention that the success of a poultry farmer, especially in the line of incubation, is usually in two main sections: the section of the incubator and the section of brooding. Now, welcome here to one of our brooders. This is a brooder. We just came from the incubation part, or rather the hatchery part, and we got chicks after 21 days. Now, after you get chicks from the hatchery, you bring them to a place called a brooder. Essentially, a brooder is a structure which has heat. You can see there's a jiko here at the center. It has lighting, and on the floor, you have to ensure it has some sawdust. Ensure that you don't use very fine sawdust on the floor, because the chicks have a tendency of eating those fine particles of the sawdust. So you should use this kind of sawdust on the floor. It has to be very dry to avoid stuffiness, and stuffiness brings a lot of diseases. The brooder has to have rounded corners to ensure that the chicks do not overcrowd on those sections of the corners. And also, as you can see, there are some drinkers. Drinkers is the equipment where the chicks get their water from. There are also some feeders. So the first thing that a farmer has to do before he or she gets chicks either from another source or from his hatchery, he has to ensure that he has this kind of a setup. And you have to disinfect your brooder 2 days before you bring your chicks to ensure that all the bacteria have been eliminated. Another important thing in a brooder is aeration, because as much as we need heat, we still need air from outside. So you need to know how to control movement of air in and out of your brooder. The chicks, of course, need feeds. They need antibiotics. They need vaccinations. They need, of course, water. So we usually train our farmers on a certain schedule of vaccination that they should follow from day one up to around 1 month, because a chick should stay in a brooder between when they are day old and up to when they are 1 month old. So here at Neo Chicks Poultry Limited, we deal with chicks of different sizes from 3 days old up to 1 month old. And what you see here is the 3-day-old chicks, which usually goes at 100 shillings. This is the mother stock. Na hawa ndio kuku wanataga, na as you can see kuna jogos na kuna females hapa ndani. Now, for your eggs to be fertilized, for you to be able to get quality eggs, there's a certain ratio that you have to maintain of the males to the females, specifically 1:5. For every 1 jogo, you should have about 5 to 6 females. Now, here another very important factor, your parent stock, the hygiene. You must always ensure there is sawdust on the floor so that you avoid of stuffiness. And also the hygiene of the eggs. You can see in the laying boxes, we put this is sawdust. You have to always ensure that the laying boxes are clean and dry so that you get clean and dry eggs.
Engineer Mongai also makes incubators using locally available raw materials, which lowers the cost and makes them available for many farmers. He will be telling us what made him move to not only incubating and brooding, but also to making your own incubators.
If a customer comes and says he doesn't have enough money for a certain incubator, we tell him we are able to make a smaller one that can fit his or her budget. We focus on locally available materials in order for us to be able to make them affordable, to make them cheap, and also in order for us to make them scalable. The fact that we are making them ourselves, we are able to be able to determine different capacities ourselves without having to import fixed sizes from the outside. The other objective is to provide labor to our youths. You know, nowadays there are not so many job opportunities around our country, so we thought that if we could start manufacturing ourselves, we'll be able to create job opportunities for our fellow youths.
Because the cost of production is very high and like 70% goes to feeds. How can you how can you help farmers come out of that situation?
These vegetables are very nutritious when you give them to chickens, and they ensure that the productivity of the chicken is high, and also ensure that the cost of feeds goes down. So you can see there are a lot of sukumas here, and it's not just what you see here. We also try to tell them to source other locally available raw materials like sorghum. There are some areas that have a lot of millet, maize. There are some areas that you find a lot of maize. Others you find a lot of wheat. Others, like our brothers in the lakeside, there is a lot of omenas there. So we try to sensitize our farmers to try and look around the area and source the cheap and the locally available raw materials that can be able to supplement the poultry feeds. And that way the cost of feeding really comes down. Something I have never ever regretted of doing is resigning from the former employment, and I consider that as my best decision ever in my life. But we don't usually tell people not to get employed, because we know that for you to start a business, you need some basis, you need some capital, you also need some skills, and some of these skills can only be obtained from the formal jobs. Something we find a lot of satisfaction in as a company, Neochicks Poultry Limited, is the way we help youth to start small businesses. They can also get to us through our social media platforms, Neochicks Poultry Limited. If you go to Facebook, you'll be able to find several pages under the name Neochicks Poultry Limited. We are also on Twitter, Neochicks Limited. We are also in Instagram, Neochicks Limited.
That brings us to the end of our episode today. Thank you so much for keeping it here. And if you have a story that you would like to share with us, talk to us through the social media handles on your screen. Until next time, keep doing what you do best. My name is Susan Mwangi.